Jordan Smith is a senior at the University of Arkansas, unsurprisingly studying English and history. She uses poetry the same way she uses academia to further the art of Southern storytelling, preserve Sapphic experiences, and promote hope over despair. She has worked with Open Mouth Literary Center and been published in the Diamond Line Lit Mag at UArk, and she has an upcoming publication in Bible Belt Queer Zine, Queer in a Time of COVID. So without further ado, here's Jordan's.
Hi. Thanks for the prop mic. I forgot I wrote that bio, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, so. Actually, it might literally just be easier for me to just hold my book, but I don't. Okay, that works. Thanks, Carson. Okay, hi. I don't consider myself like a super traditional poet or whatever. I'm not trained in it. I didn't study creative writing. I just kind of did this for fun. So a lot of these events that I have done in the past couple of months, I go into it wanting to encourage people who also consider themselves not poets, like capital N, capital P, not poets, to consider writing, or at least like preserving their lived experience in some way. So I wrote this first little thing before I went to speak to a room full of like 10-year-olds, and I thought that it might be fitting for this occasion at the library. It has an intro, but it's about children, so I'm gonna skip it. So here is my rule book for poetry if you want to be the one on a stage spilling diary pages to strangers. Rule 1, there are no rules. Forget the rhymes, forget the lines. Poetry snobs are sad and boring. Tell your story with slashes or space bars. Use proper grammar or whatever you were raised on. Be you. Not Olivia Gatwood, not Blythe Baird, not Melissa Lozada Oliva, you. Rule 2, tell the story you want to tell. Do you love how the waitress draws a smiley face on your check? Do you notice a bird perched beside your car every morning? Did the scuff of your shoe on pavement remind you of a feeling you can't quite name? Write about it. Write it down even if it doesn't make sense. Write down that your heart was syrup on pancakes, melting and sticking to anything it touched. Or scuffs felt like tripping into tomorrows no one could predict and somehow the same as all your yesterdays. Say what you mean and say what you don't. Just say something. Rule 3, remember anything can be poetry. I had a teacher one time who said everything isn't poetry, and here I am saying this to you and somehow still being called a poet. When you write a poem, you just know. This isn't a letter, a novel, a short story, a notes app apology. This is a poem. Say it loud. This is a poem. This is a poem. This is a poem. Your life is a poem. So rule 4, write it down, and rule 5, keep living. That was the first one. Thanks. I don't know if any of you have ever been to like a poetry event before. I forgot to kind of say this at the beginning. You're allowed to make noises, you're allowed to react, you're allowed to laugh, you're allowed to, sometimes they do the thing, you know, where they're like, Like sometimes that happens. So you don't have to like sit here perfectly quiet. I know it's a library, but you know, you're not gonna distract me, I promise. So like I kind of say in that one, I like to use my poetry as like a storytelling device. So I'm gonna tell you a story. When I was 16 and 17 and 18, I worked at a diner in my hometown. They say Elvis stopped there once, and every other person in line used to work here. It would be eerie if I didn't stop in there now once a year when I'm down for Christmas and stand on the floors I've swept 1,000 times and look at the unfamiliar girl behind the counter. But when that tired girl was me frantically filling drinks, I had friends like you wouldn't believe. The grouchy old man who decided he liked me, the lady who ordered a coffee and an ice cream at shift change every Sunday. But my favorite is this old guy who turned out to be a sort of hometown legend. But to him, I was the tired and smiling girl, and to me, he was the old man who couldn't hear. He had to be almost completely deaf, and the diner was one where we called order numbers, and he couldn't hear them no matter where he sat, so I always carried his food to him. And when he finished his meal, he'd come back to order an ice cream cone, and I could still hear the rumbly purr of the soft serve machine that was older than I was. As I made him the tallest cone I could, which is tall. One day I had it all planned out, and I signed for his cone and said dessert was on me. I remember him looking at me, wondering if he'd read my lips correctly. I'm used to being the one doing for others, he said. It's not usually me. Tears in his eyes, 1,000 smiles between us at this point. Old friends. Counter between us, too. I'd never seen his shoes. Next time he came in, he told me every week he came there with his wife. Not too long before I started there, they left one day and she had a heart attack on the way home. He kept coming. How do you break that habit? But how do you walk those same tile floors alone? Catch glimpses of her in the neon sign, taste the decades in the soft serve? So an ice cream cone was more. I worked there long enough to meet his lady friend, and then I was making 2 cones, hers much smaller. And they were off seeing some American park or another on weeks he didn't show, but I knew he'd tell me about it next week. My first grade teacher approached me at church, which is very my hometown thing to say, and clasped my hands and told me that was her father, and I didn't know what that ice cream meant to him. I blushed and tried to nod and walk away, but I remember then feeling, no, that moment's not yours. That's between my old man and his smiley waitress with the tallest cones. Thanks. Okay, so I kind of had a couple of things in here that I was like up in the air about whether I was gonna skip it if there were like children present or something. I'm gonna do a few things. Mild overall mental health trigger warning kind of for the next couple things. If you wanna like leave, you're not gonna distract me. An intro, this was a little snippet that I wrote in a class. I think you were probably there. When I was a child, I never cried mercy. Look into my eyes while you crush me. I was always perfect at a poker face. Unflinching, something to prove. Tell me cry mercy, I'll tell you you first. Now I've already been proven, and I'm proven wrong. Proven unstable and fragile. Fired too long in the kiln, gritting my teeth, eyes screaming sleepless nights. No one to cry mercy to. Who could stop the crushing? Not me, not you. Have you played Mercy? Have you played Mercy? Oh my god, it's a game. You played Mercy, right? You walk up to any child and you just squeeze each other's hands as long as you can, and the first person to cry mercy loses. So it occurred to me after I read that it's not a universal experience. I have one on my phone I would like to read too. This was for Open Mouth, which is a cool poetry thing in Fayetteville if you don't already know that. Don't mind me. Just gotta look at my UARC account. Slay. Okay, there we go. This was the first thing I wrote whenever I was the resident poet during December. I was given a space to write in by Open Mouth Poetry, like Literacy Center, and I was just kind of trying to think of something to start writing. So I decided I was going to write about every snowfall I could think of as far back in my memory as I could go, which is not very many because I'm from Southeast Arkansas. So it's called Snowfall. The first I remember was in 3rd grade, just beginning to flurry down as I walked into a store on the square to get my ears pierced. When I came out, a woman, it hadn't stopped, and I stared in wonder at the sky. Second in my memory, 16 maybe, I was working, a child, then I had to catch my shift at the diner. It froze the town for days. School shut down and sent us home with packets of work. The tree outside my window glistened under heavy ice, beautiful and bending, suggesting eventual shattering, like me, cracks forming. 19 at college, sliding on the ice outside the dining hall with my roommate, told her one day we will look back on this moment. Sparkling present tense nostalgia. That was the day my mom said I needed to stop eating. It was frozen outside. I was in my car watching the frost melt. I felt the chill enter inside me, and as the snow fell that night spiraling down, so was I. By the next snow, I was unrecognizable. 20, standing on top of a building at the university, looking down at gray street, gray sky, gray people trudging past, umbrellas shielding me from fat flakes, and my snow clothes weighed more than me. I'm trudging to therapy soon, but for now, I watch flakes fall whisperingly silent over a miserable world and take a painful breath before I walk inside, 21. COVID raging, quarantine Valentine's Day, I live with my girlfriend and the temperatures drop lower than they ever have. I trip and traipse to the gas station to buy wine, I drink with my ex-professor. The water is frozen, but we're drinking rum anyway, laughing, spinning in the street outside. I fall and gash my hand open, and she keeps laughing. Doesn't notice. Snow stained red like that memory. I fell asleep with her 2 bedrooms over from my girlfriend who pretended she didn't mind, but I deserved what I had coming, and as the frost crept around the windows, I knew my crystalline heart was cracking again. Memories fading before they were made, powdered footsteps leading right to self-destruction like pretty mutilation, like frozen electricity, like words floating in air so cold it hurts, and left alone with silence and snowflakes, wondering what numb ache the next snowfall will bring. Thanks, I promise I am a really good therapist. Okay. I dyed my hair back to brown the night I dropped 4 out of 5 of my classes, previously flaming red, which everyone complimented and no one recognized for what it was. When I was close to relapsing, I let my sister cut all my hair off in the bathroom, and now I'm growing it back out again. I still remember the hair on the floor. After I dyed it bright pink, I cut my parents off, and when my roots grew out, they apologized. I redyed it fuchsia, wading through the lifelong hurt, cut my bangs like when I was 15. Now it's to my shoulders again, and dark, brings out my liar's eyes, and the girl in the mirror still looks like me, but not quite. If I manage to grow it out again, it will be the first time since I was 19. I want to braid it like she did, sit in the sun for the first time alone. Alone with her, my pink-haired self, the version with bangs too, smooth down her flyaways and kiss her on the cheek. You might notice that almost none of these are titled. They're all timed and dated, but I really don't title my poetry. This next one was published in the Diamond Line, so I thought that I would read it. That's from last semester. The new issue is coming out soon in a couple of weeks. You should pick it up, it's free. This is like pretty major trigger warning, but it's okay, I promise it has a hopeful ending. Spoiler. I do not have a scale. I cringe away from mirrors in my ex-girlfriend's apartment. I cry in the bathroom after someone won't stop talking to me about calorie deficits and protein shakes masquerading as meals. I cry in the bathroom anyway. I play YouTube videos on 2 times speed when I shower so I can ignore my body. Please ignore my body. I told myself I was done with anorexic poetry. I am to the point now, when I talk about it, that people glance down or at my chubby cheeks and I want to protest. I want to show them the pictures of my bruised spine from sleeping in sit-ups. I want to show them how you could count my ribs and vertebrae. I want to tell them my waistline and oh, believe me, the number was unbelievable. I want to prove I was sick. I was sick. I used to be so good at being sick. Please stop looking at me now and disbelieving at me. Stop looking at me now. I swear to God, I try to be proud of this body. Yes, Blythe, please forgive me, but this is the second time I've had to upsize my jeans. And when the new coworker asked, what was your lowest weight the day he met me, I go home and cry because I'm now the size of 2 of that dying girl and no one cares anymore. I tell my therapist I don't feel good at recovery. I just feel bad at having an eating disorder. I cry, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, and avoid my mirrors and somehow live another day. I dream of forgetting I have a body, picking up a donut in the morning without knowing the calories, drinking my Dr. Pepper without other people commenting to me about the sugar. I know, I promise, I know. You know, they say you aren't recovered for 7 years. I dream of 7 years. I dream of going back and getting her help before she became me. I dream of stopping the next girl. I will not listen to you talk about your diet. You deserve to eat. You've always deserved to eat. Me and the next girl and you deserve to eat. I work as a princess. When I started, I still had that impossible waistline. People cooed over my corseting, but now I absolutely flounce into parties. I sing and don't get dizzy. I chase kids around the yard. They look up at me and say, I love you. They look up at me and say, you're beautiful. I look back and say, you too. I mean it. They don't know I struggle to zip up my dress. They don't know I'm avoiding a double chin. They smile with their whole body, and all they know is I can pick them up now, so I do a lot of picking up. Really, recovery is a lot of picking up. And we laugh, and I'd give anything if I could keep them from becoming me, but for now we're twirling, hands on hips, no matter how wide. Thanks. It gets better. And not necessarily because you find some internal strength, or because some miracle happens, or life suddenly becomes easy or fair, but maybe because you catch a glimpse of your friend smiling at just the right angle, and feel your heart ache with love so strong you already miss this moment. And maybe you walk trembling into the office of your scholarship advisor who has known you for the last 4 years, and instead of criticism, she comes around the desk and gives you a hug, and you realize at some point you grew up in front of her. Maybe you see your little sister cooking in the kitchen you now share, sidestepping her dog, her cat, and her boyfriend in that order, and it hits you that she never needed you to rescue her. I don't know if I believe in universal truths, But don't we all glance up at the moths circling the streetlight, and haven't we all breathed the cool gray morning air? Pain is so real, but so is quiet, breathtaking hope in this endless, glowing continuing. And I'm gonna close with my other open mouth poem, and then concede the floor. I took a screenshot of this one, so here we go. I am sitting in a room and I'm wondering what I did to deserve being here. I'm sitting in a room writing I statements into a notebook that is falling apart from overuse and is not pretty but stained, garish, with highlighters from my notes about Nazis and colonialism and all sorts of white academic things. I'm sitting in a room taking up space that could have been someone else's. I'm sitting in a room with an old armchair like my Aunt Melba's, who is not my aunt, who is an old lady tougher than nails, who wears a fake wedding ring and has a man's coat by her door in case of intruders, who invited the whole town over for Thanksgiving and continues even as people slowly stopped coming, who owns half of Drew County and lives in a drafty, creaky, tiny home. And last time I was home, I asked my dad how she was doing, and he, surprised, told me she had been dead for years. When did she die? Why did no one tell me? Did she die alone like so many Thanksgivings? This room has creaky floors like hers. She was a mean old lady. She's a dying breed. I loved her. I'm sitting in a room that reminds me of extinction. I'm sitting in a room writing stream of consciousness poetry, if you can even call it that. I'm sitting in a room still stuck on my hometown. These windows look just like the old houses on the square, the kind you have to prop open with a stick. Don't they always come with these wood floors? Is the house trying to tell me something when she creaks under my weight? Is she asking for me to remember her? Does she know that I will? Does she know I couldn't forget if I tried? I'm sitting in a room wishing, being a little too much of an academic for real poetry, true poetry, good, stinging time capsule poetry. I'm sitting in a room being a little too much of a redneck for academia, southern accent dripping on my homework like honey. Hometown ghost tied to me as I'm fighting for a seat in the classroom. We all need a seat, can you scoot over? I'm sitting in a room being a little too much of too many worlds, a little paper thin. My roommate says I'm spread so far, I'm translucent. I sit at this desk and think of my grandpa who taught college classes without a degree until they realized. I think we might have had more in common than we thought. It's too bad he died when I was 10. I think he would like this room. He was a carpenter. He would have loved this dusty wood smell. I'm sitting in a room that has gotten dark around me. I'm standing in the room. I am leaving. Goodbye.